A group of New York lawmakers has introduced a proposal to condition federal funding for universities on their efforts to monitor and combat anti-Semitism on campus. The bipartisan initiative aims to address rising anti-Semitic incidents across the country by ensuring that educational institutions take active steps to report and counter such hate speech and behavior. Emily Schrader has the story.
Congressman Torres, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start by asking you, given the anti-Semitic scenes that we saw on campus in the last school year, and that we've already started to see some of them in this school year that just started, what is Congress doing and what can Congress do to help combat this hate speech on campus?
One thing we have done is we passed the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act in the House, which would essentially codify the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, right? As you know, IRA provides the most complete and comprehensive definition of anti-Semitism. It rightly recognizes that anti-Zionism is the latest mutation in the DNA of anti-Semitism. And so I think mandating the adoption of IRA, we passed the legislation in the House, but it's waiting passage in the Senate.
Now, there's been a lot of foreign investment, we'll say, from other countries such as Qatar and a few others in American universities that some believe has contributed to the anti-Semitism we see on campus. Can anything be done about that at the congressional level, and is anything being done to prevent foreign interference in our universities?
Yeah, I worry that American higher education has become corrupted by foreign gifts. The largest contributor to institutions of higher learning here in the United States is Qatar. And Qatar is a known financier of Hamas. I'm of the view that universities that receive federal funding should be prohibited from receiving funding from adversaries of the United States like China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, or receiving funding from countries like Qatar that are known to finance terrorist organizations. We cannot allow foreign countries to weaponize American institutions against America and effectively wage malign foreign influence operations on college campuses. Enough is enough.
Now, one of the things that you have kind of led in the Congress is holding social media companies accountable, such as TikTok, which has been quite controversial here. In this war, after October 7th, how have we seen social media abused, we'll say, by state disinformation, such as China, such as the Islamic Republic of Iran? How has this impacted what we're seeing, to what Americans are seeing on social media?
So there's nothing unprecedented about anti-Semitism, which is an ancient hatred. What is unprecedented is the algorithmic amplification of anti-Semitism on social media. Social media platforms like TikTok and Twitter are enabling the anti-Semitic virus to spread at a speed and on a scale that we've never seen before. And the most egregious example is TikTok. I sat on the China committee, which was the driving force behind legislation that would force a divestment on the part of TikTok. And our concern is that TikTok is not merely a social media platform, but it's become the leading news source for the next generation of Americans who are largely forming their views on issues like Israel on the basis of disinformation on TikTok. And the fact that we would allow the leading news source for our most malleable minds to be in the hands of our leading foreign adversary, the Chinese Communist Party, is an act of national self-sabotage. That would have been the equivalent of allowing the Soviet company to own ABC, CBS, and NBC during the peak of the Cold War. And so we in Congress came to conclude that TikTok is a prohibitive national security risk for the United States and for the U.S.-Israel relationship.
Now, we're in a very interesting time right before presidential elections. Things are very divisive and partisan today. And anti-Semitism has been weaponized by some on the left and some on the right as something on the other side. Of course, we know anti-Semitism comes from every direction. What is your response to this sort of politicization of this issue?
Look, those who politicize anti-Semitism are not part of the solution. They are part of the problem. There are those on the left who only see anti-Semitism on the right. And there are those on the right who only see anti-Semitism on the left. And we have to recognize that anti-Semitism comes from all directions. And we have to be committed to combating anti-Semitism, no matter what form it takes, no matter what ideological direction from which it comes. We have to transcend partisan politics in the service of combating anti-Semitism.
I know there's been some legislation put forward, or perhaps some resolutions that are bipartisan in nature. You yourself have been a part of those when it comes to dealing with anti-Semitism, particularly on campuses. What can you tell us about those resolutions or the bills that have been proposed?
For me, the problem is not a lack of legislation. The problem is a lack of enforcement. Right? If you are a college or university that is creating a hostile environment for Jews on college campus, you are acting in violation of Title VI of civil rights law. You are violating the civil rights of your Jewish students, and we need to ensure that there are more effective enforcement mechanisms for Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. So I've introduced legislation that would empower the Federal Department of Education to impose a monitor. There should be a monitor who's on the ground, who sees the facts on the ground with his own eyes, and who will report to the Department of Education whether a particular college or university is complying with civil rights law. And if it turns out that a university is out of compliance, then we have to leverage the power that we have over federal funds to compel compliance.
Absolutely. Congressman Ritchie Torres, thank you so much for your time.
Always.